time for another in-your-face featured band on Rebel Access.
Welcome to another episode of Rebel Access. I'm your host, Vanessa, and
who are your musical influences growing up?
Hey, there's one right on my shirt right here. Peter Criss. He showed me everything about guitar. Wait, is that Peter? No, this guy, Gene Simmons. He played guitar in Kiss. Paul Stent.
No. What's that dude? He's from like the Bronx.
Ace Frehley.
I thought it was J.J. French.
No, Ace Frehley. I wanted to be Ace Frehley. I wanted to form Kiss 2 when I was a kid. I was like, hey, well, I'm going to grow up and form a band called Kiss 2. But unfortunately, it was
T-O-O.
It was DSI'd. So there you go. And my dad, who played guitar, and then eventually it was Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, and Jerry Reed.
I started out with Kiss and Ace Frehley too. Actually, I started off with Deep Purple when I was like 6, but I would just listen to it and liked it. But got into Kiss, and then UFO and Michael Schenker made me want to be a professional musician. And then it was Gary Moore and Uli John Roth. Keep your eyes off my shoes there, Tootsie. And as far as bands, I liked Thin Lizzy, Scorpions, Black Sabbath, UFO, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, the same stuff at Rainbow that everybody else likes. And, well, it wasn't actually Satyricon. It was a band that makes fun of black metal. They're called Satyricon. Yeah. Just a little known fact, they annoy me.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
For me, it's like Motley Crue, Kiss, Metallica, Testament, Slayer, Megadeth, Pantera, that kind of stuff.
There's a little bit of variety there.
Yeah.
I'm a little more across the board. I love everything that he's into as well, but growing up, my dad kind of influenced my my music style. You know, he got me hooked on Zeppelin and stuff like that. So I love the oldies rock. I love the 80s rock. I grew up on Pantera, and you know, I love grunge and shit too. So all of that, and then even going into the you know, like the pop world and country. I love country.
What?
Yeah, there's not really much that I don't like, honestly, but I can find things that are interesting, you know, all kinds.
His favorite song is "Achy Breaky Heart."
Yes, and I like to do the dance too while I'm, you know, listening to it.
And he likes the Macarena.
Smart song.
And what would be your musical influences?
Well, you know, it's obvious when you, the obvious ones like Dead Boys, the Iggy and the Stooges, Alice Cooper, things like that. And of course, you know, some darker stuff like the Cult, Sisters of Mercy.
Of course.
Elvis, The Doors.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Danzig, everything what Mr. Glenn Danzig does. You know.
Okay, of course.
You know, a lot of stuff.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
Jesus, growing up, I listened to a lot of the Beatles and a lot of Hispanic music, ranchero stuff, Tejano music, salsa, cumbia, Seal, I love Seal, and Weird Al Yankovic.
Weird Al was huge in my life. MC Hammer. Then I went straight to Guar, then Cannibal Corpse.
Oh yeah, Cannibal. Yeah, them death metal bands.
Yeah.
As a musician, what artists or bands would you say have had the most influence on you personally?
Me personally, wow. I'll start it off with a preface. There's the obvious ones that, you know, myself and the rest of the guys were into. Metallica got us all into music. Right. You know, the collective favorites, Metallica, Pantera, Megadeth, Testament, Slayer, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest. A couple of big bands that changed music for me were In Flames at first, then Killswitch Engage, Machine Head, Slipknot. Currently, the bands that I'm mostly listening to are Depeche Mode and Mozart, and I'm listening to New Kings of Leon a lot lately. I know none of that's metal, but I find it incredibly inspiring. And I was into Kelly Clarkson when we did The Crusade and the Beatles. When we did Shogun, I was into Queen heavily also during the Crusade era. Ascendancy, I was into a lot of the, a lot of Swedish melodic death and also what was going on in kind of that current hardcore, metalcore scene for a little bit. And so with me, it's like, all music is good music to me. I'm not elitist. I'm not an elitist metalhead guy. You know, we throw dance parties in front of our bus. I like Katy Perry and 80s pop and Michael Jackson. And so for me, it's life is too short and there's too much amazing music out there to limit yourselves. But, you know, no matter what influences you, whatever helps you make what you make, like in our case with Trivium, we make obviously a metal band, we play metal, we make metal, and we're influenced by all sorts of things.
Okay.
Who are your musical influences growing up?
Wow. I mean, is that like for the whole band or just for me?
I guess for you.
All right. I think for me, it's like a really wide variety of musicians. You know, it was everything from like David Bowie, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Anita Lane, Henry Rollins, even The Cure, or the band called The Ruts that I really thought were great. The Clash, Iron Maiden. There's a band called Front 242 that I thought were seminal. You know, I listened to so much different music. I lived out in the country, like way out from people, and there were really like none of the music I liked was anything that school would listen to. Actually, I would like sit up late at night and listen to the radio, and I'd record stuff. And I send. I have what do you call that? Well, I have music magazines that I like get every once in a while. Every time anyone came from the big city, that I have them bring music magazines. But for me, I didn't have any distinction as far as, this is metal or this is punk rock or this is, pop or whatever. I thought, good music is good music. I didn't really care at all. And it was kind of a shock when I moved out, because I was 15 when I moved out, and I found this tiny, went to high school and I worked. And to see how, well, I went from the country, to this little town. But the little town thought it was a really big place, It's really funny. And how, distinct the little scenes were. And it was so ridiculous, because it was it was so ridiculous to even have scenes in a place that small. So I kind of kept my own thing going. I look for music that I think is good music, and I've kind of stayed that way. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that we got together as a band and really have enjoyed being together as a band, because we take inspiration from so many places, and then we happen to kind of have a general kind of expression towards some kind of metal, but we don't know what we're playing. Some kind of metal, I guess, but the influences.
Some kind of good music.
Yeah, some kind of metal, good music, metal, hardcore, whatever. It's something we enjoy.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
Metallica, Pantera, Slayer, Megadeth, Sepultura, Cannibal Corpse, all the hitters.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
Growing up, I'd say, well, first of all, Metallica, Pantera, all that. And then I've been into brutal death metal for a couple of years, Gorgasm, Malevolent Creation, Suffocation, stuff like that.
Way to go, and you?
Listened to metal since, 1992. Started out with Pantera, Sepultura, anything that finishes with a And then, starting 1996, 1997, I got into death metal. Listened to a lot of Suffocation, Dying Fetus, and as years went by, got into the whole hardcore scene as well. I like Madball, Terror, some of the old school stuff, Biohazard maybe, and some of the more techier stuff like Destroy, Erase, Improve by Meshuggah, Calculating Infinity by Dillinger Escape Plan. Basically, our band is all those influences mixed together.
So as a musician, what artists or bands would you say have had the most influence on you?
Slayer. I mean, yes, you know, well, I mean, it's definitely a dream come true, I think, for all of us in Cannibal Corpse to finally be on a tour with Slayer. You know, we've done some festivals over the years, kind of a thing with them, but to actually be on the same bill and, you know, be able to, you know, see them every night has been just a dream come true. You know, I'm in, you know, complete amazement and awe and overwhelmed by all that. It's a great thing, but, you know, they were one of the bands that we, of course, worshiped back in the day starting out, you know. You know, we're a product of the mid-'80s kind of a thing, early '80s, so we were just growing with the whole metal movement scene anyway. So of course, you know, it's really just the cliche bands that started, you know, Cannibal Corpse, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, you know, moving up to early Metallica, you know, which then in turn, you know, gets you into Slayer, and then into Creator, and then Dark Angel, and then, you know, the rest is, you know, history, I guess. But pretty much all those bands in the '80s were big influences on Cannibal Corpse.
Well, what were your musical influences growing up?
First band that influenced me in terms of being a musician myself was Motorhead, probably. They were the first band really that were kind of aggressive and fast and what I really wanted to get out of a band, you know. And after that it was a lot of things, some punk stuff from England like Discharge, GBH, and metal stuff, Celtic Frost, Death, Repulsion, all kinds of stuff, you know.
Musical influences growing up?
Well, I think all of us listened to the regular 80s hair bands and stuff like that, except for Klaus, who started to listen to Slayer and Metallica before they even were formed. But Peter and I listened to like Iron Maiden, Mötley Crüe, stuff like that, Ozzy Osbourne. We wanted to look like them when we grew up. We wanted to have long hair, big haircuts, stuff like that. But turned out in a different way, I guess. But yeah, and then in the beginning of the '90s, we started to focus more on more brutal music like Entombed, Slayer, Death, Morbid Angel, stuff like that. And we when we heard Meshuggah for the first time, the Swedish band Meshuggah, we found what we really loved in music. You know, the technical stuff and the brutalness at the same time. So that's what we're trying to do, while at the same time being a little bit more melodic and a little bit more easy to listen to than Meshuggah.
All right.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
A lot of German thrash, like Sodom, Destruction, Creator. Some like speed metal bands like Halloween, Blind Guardian, and like thrash band like Sabbath from England because of the lyrics and stuff. As well as, you know, some old school death metal like Morbid Angel, you know, Demolition Hammer, that kind of stuff from America. So those were the big ones, the big reasons why we formed the band, you know.
And who were your musical influences growing up?
Well,
Air Supply.
My favorite band when I was younger was The Clash and The Police and AC/DC, and then later I got into like heavier stuff. You know, my favorite band of all time is Slayer, hands down.
Nice.
So.
Of course.
Who are your musical influences growing up?
Wow. I've never been a band per se that I really liked. There's some bands that I like in general, most of their records. I'm more of a song guy. I like songs from different bands. But I grew up a lot listening to like Ozzy and heavy metal and thrash. I was really big into thrash bands like Testament, Nuclear Assault, stuff like that. I grew up listening to that, so that's always going to be my kind of favorite type of music when you're looking at underground stuff. But the more mainstream, you know, of course, Ronnie James Dio, not that it has anything to do with Get Well, by the way. And everything else that I listened to was always based on stuff that's more organic, you know. Like I really liked Ozzy a lot. I was a big fan of his music growing up and still am. So, you know, anything from like that old stuff and also some of the hard rock, you know, my old band, that's what we listen to a lot. So anything from that all the way to the most extreme form, of course, that I like. But I'm big into classical music as well, like, you know, Tyler Bates and a lot of different guys that write some of the musical scores. I'm into that a lot, so. So that's kind of combines a little bit what Exdeo is in a way, you know. So.
And what were some of your musical influences when you guys were growing up?
I listened to a lot of old school metal at first, and that kind of led to like punk and hardcore in the late 80s and early 90s and stuff. But we're all over the place as far as our influences go. But I think the common ground's kind of that Bay Area thrash metal, like Testament and Death, that as well as old school like Maiden and Judas Priest and stuff.
Awesome.
Matt listens to Yanni. No, that's true.
Who would you say are your main musical influences?
Well, there's a lot of guitar players for me. Like all the Aussie guys, like Randy Rhoads, Jake Lee, Zach Wilde. There's like Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert.
If you're talking about our personal influences, because
Yeah.
the band has such a huge variety of different influences that it's really difficult to name anything. For me, it has been the original Yngwie Malmsteen keyboard player Jens Johansson, and later he joined Stratovarius and has been a really important thing for me.
And what were your musical influences growing up?
You're gonna have to go all the way around on that one.
Yeah, so I grew up on straight up metal. I'm gonna go say it with my European accent. Whoa, somebody killed a cell phone. Who is it? Somebody's gonna get shot for this one.
I'm innocent.
Innocent. The cameraman has a cell phone on. Who is it? Are you on T-Mobile? T-Mobile, you just got a free commercial, so you better send us some shit, It's like we're waiting for
that.
it.
Keep your phone.
So you guys can edit it anyway, so it's all good. So yeah, influences. I grew up on straight up metal, any way you want to say it, from Accept to Iron Maiden. Back in the days, you couldn't be in a band if you couldn't write a song, if you couldn't play your instrument. And pretty much that's the idea here. Everybody in the band is on top shelf musician. Everybody knows what they're doing, And somebody's waving at me to hand the microphone. I guess I'm done.
I had a wide variety of influences. Slayer, certainly, Testament, old Metallica, huge influences for me. But I like new wave too. I like a bunch of different things. Prince, so it's pretty. Bowie, absolutely. Kind of run the whole gamut.
Absolutely.
And for myself, I was kind of a punk rock kid. I really liked the Misfits, loved Danzig, Faith No More, Henry Rollins, stuff like that. I also grew up on, Pantera is my all-time favorite band. I was a big fan of the grunge era. I loved, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots. Music's universal, so it would be wrong for me to say that there's one or another that I don't like. But I'm pretty much influenced by just about everything that you could ever put on the radio or put in front of me, for that matter. So.
What artists or bands would you say have influenced you the most?
Say a lot of older New York hardcore bands like Leeway, Madball, Sick of All, bands like that. But also bands from California like Chain of Strength. Also lots of metal stuff, Slayer, stuff like that. That was good enough.
Yeah. So who would you say are your personal musical influences?
I have a lot of musical influences. They range really randomly. A couple of my favorite bands are Integrity, Ringworm, Earth, Neurosis. I really like Black Sabbath, and then at the same time, I listen to a lot of jazz and some country music sometimes, and a very minimal amount of hip hop. So I have a lot of. I range from country to extreme, so it gets pretty nuts.
What artists or bands would you say have had the most influence on you as a musician?
The Beatles, Pink Floyd, Aphex Twin, Morbid Angel, and Gustav Mahler.
What artists or bands would you say have had the most influence on you as a musician?
Me personally, I'm going to go with AC/DC. Was my first very big influence. Listening to AC/DC taught me how to play riffs, and really great riffs at that. But I'd have to say that Metallica, James Hetfield, and just his style of rhythm playing got me interested in metal guitar. And from there, it went on to Exodus and Slayer. So I'm very influenced by the Bay Area thrash scene.
And who were some of your influences growing up?
Queen was huge for me. It was really big and still is.
I'm more into Pantera and harder stuff, Metallica, stuff like that. So.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
My musical influences when I was growing up spanned anywhere from a band called the Electric Light Orchestra to the Beatles to Earth, Wind and Fire to the Eagles, all the way to Iron Maiden and Slayer, and even big band music. You know, I grew up in a big family, so there was tons of records at my disposal. So I got a chance to listen to everything, and it all kind of found its way, you know, into my life.
What were your musical influences growing up?
Guitar player wise, definitely like Tony Iommi of Sabbath, John McLaughlin, Jimi Hendrix, you know, Angus Young, you know, the Slayer, Judas Priest, like all the early 80s metal bands and a lot of the thrash bands like Megadeth, Metallica, all that sort of stuff, pretty much.
Who are your musical influences growing up?
Oh, wow. Well, when I started listening to metal, I started listening to Marilyn Manson, stuff like that, and Cradle of Filth, and just normal metal bands. But nowadays, I listen to everything. It doesn't matter if it's metal or not.
Who are your musical influences?
Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, you know, pretty much the old wave of British heavy metal, new wave of British heavy metal.
Do you have some main bands that have influenced you?
For me, like a real formative band for me is Einstürzen and Neubauten. They're a German band, and they're real primal at the same time. They're very apocalyptic, and their whole songwriting structure, they're like the godfathers of industrial. They didn't use really electronics. They used actual sheet metal and drills on bed springs and things like that, and made really, really dark music. And the singer's the way he used his voice as an instrument for like this burning soul really hit me hard. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, bands like Cocteau Twins and Cranes and real ethereal vocals on the female side of things influenced like the lightness in my singing, and you know, those several groups like had a major impact on me in my early formative years of jamming. So.
Yep.
So, who are your musical influences growing up?
Growing up, obviously Elvis, great influence, still is actually. I still listen to that kind of stuff. Later on it moved into Kiss, of course, because that was the biggest band in the end of the 70s. So I was a lot into Kiss, and you know, later came, you know, the usual stuff, Iron Maiden, Metallica, and of course I forgot Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, the stuff that everybody was listening to back then. I mean, we have to remember the metal music, hard rock music was the biggest music back in at least in the mid 80s. When I started, like what do you call it, ungdomsskolen, like
High school?
Yeah, high school, or yeah, high school. When I started high school in '86, every kid was into metal. Metal was the biggest thing on earth back then. So obviously everybody was into it, and the ones like me and him that really loved the music continued and started to listen to acts like Bathory, Celtic Frost, stuff like that. And I think that's especially those two bands are the major reason for us to start Enslaved, Bathory and Celtic Frost.
You know me, Megadeth. I know you, fans. Good to see you. Let's go.
Hey, this is Greg Christian from Testament. You're watching Rebel Access.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Halford.
I'm KK Downing.
And Glenn Tipton.
Of Judas Priest. And this is Rebel Access.
What's up? This is Brian.
And Matt from Shadows Fall.
And you're watching Rebel Access.
Hey, I'm Robin.
And I'm Karen from Sonic Syndicate, and you're watching
Rebel Access TV.
We're Himza. And you're watching Rebel Access TV. Raw.
Hey, this is Peter, and this is
Christopher from Dark Chain.
and you are watching
Rebel Access TV.
This is John Schaefer from Iced Earth, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Hi, this is OTEP, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Whenever you're ready.
This is Phil Fasciana from Malevolent Creation, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
This is Ray from Full Blown Chaos, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
This is Nick from A Life Once Lost, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
Yo, this is God Forbid, and we're watching and being on Rebel Access.
Watching? How are you watching it if you're on it right now?
Because I'm watching the camera in front of my freaking eyes, man. Yo, I'm watching you cats. Hey, what's up? This is Byron and Doc and Corey from God Forbid.
I
And,
gotta see my real name and stuff.
hey, what's up?
They speak that's good.
This is B. Yo, all right. Hey, what's up? This is B, C, and D, and you're watching Rebel Access.
What's up? This is Dez.
This is Miller.
And we are
Devil Driver.
And you are watching
Rebel Access.
Rebel Access.
Hi, I'm Bob Forrest.
And I'm Phil Dumfries.
And we're with Roger Cavalier's Attitude Brigade. And you're watching Rebel Rock something on the show right now. Yeah.
And you can take that to the bank.
Baby.
Everybody, what the hell's going on? This is Zach Wild from Black Label Society and the Ozzy Osbourne Band. And we're all doing a hang, throwing back some cold ones, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Hey, baby. This is Mike from Opeth, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
Hey, what's up, Vince? This is Nuriel from Behemoth speaking. You're watching Rebel Access TV. Keep it metal.
Hey, what's up? This is Michael Amod.
I'm Daniel.
We're from Arch Enemy, and you're enjoying Rebel Access.
What's up? This is Killswitch Engage.
Yep, I'm Adam Deem. That was my friend Joel. Yep,
And
rock guitar players.
What are you watching?
You are watching.
Oh, what are they watching?
Yo, yeah, you, not you, them.
Yeah, you guys are watching
Rebel Access.
This is Karen Crisis, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Hi, I'm Jan. That's Lexi. We're children of Bodom, and you are watching Rebel Access.
Woo!
What's up? This is Mercedes.
And this is Tara, and we're one half of Kitty.
And you are watching Rebel Access.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Lenus from Dimmu Borgir, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Buyers watching Rebel Access TV. This is Jyrki from the 69 Eyes, your favorite Helsinki vampire.
Right here, speak of this. Squeeze it together, squeeze it together. Squeeze it together, give me cleavage, here it is. Oh, yeah. All right, you ready? Are we ready to go? Yeah, what I gotta say. All right. This is All Shall Perish, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
Yes, son. Yes, son. Hi, this is Maurizio from Cataclysm, and you're watching Rebel Access.
What's up, everybody? This is Jamie Josta.
This is Sean Martin from Hatebreed.
You're watching Rebel Access TV.
Yeah! Hey, we're from Dragon Force. I'm Sam.
And I'm Herman. I'm the guitarist.
And I'm the other guitarist.
Yep, and you're watching Rebel Access TV.
Hey.
This is Ben from Goat Whore, and you're watching Rebel Access.
Hi, this is Jolan from Armin Amarth, and you're watching Rebel Access.
This is Ivan Moody from Five Finger Death Punch, Jeremy Spencer and Zoltan, signing on to Rebel Access, telling you to keep it metal. We'll see you soon.
We're Tara, and you're watching Rebel Access.
This is Martin Arregain from Celtic Frost, and you are watching Rebel Access TV. Oh!
This is Warbringer. This is a dead person. You're watching Rebel Access.
Hey, this is Rob.
And Phil from Machine Head.
And you're watching Rebel Access.
Hello, everybody. This is Max Cavalera. You're watching Rebel Access. I see everybody on tour. Peace out.
Your legs are long and toned. You must be walking home. I love the way your lips move when you're talking on your phone. Intoxicating, you're truly a dewy impurities. Plague every thought of you while I'm trailing you like your security. Lost, we couldn't know our paths would cross, but time knew it. Feet sticking out the window of opportunity, climbing through it. Paying for sale, looking to find a new taker. Chance to speak blown when you looked at me, I looked in the newspaper. Because the sky opened and God handed you directly to me. I know it sounds crazy, but so is life. I'm sinking and feeling like your heart is beating solely for me. I'm miles out of my way, creepy, I want more. Was gonna turn back, but you stuck your key in your front door. We're standing across the street, the stars that align us to me. Standing outside with your trash, feeling incomplete. My finger aching for your doorbell like a random blog. Instead I lurk outside in the cold like an abandoned dog. Perish the thought, you should cherish the words that I got in my mouth. The only words that can truly explain how I got in your house. Because the sky opened and